One, two, three, one, two, three. Hello.
Hello, you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. No video, only audio.
There's no video. Okay. Well, I didn't use this before, so let's see. Window, edit, start video, I guess.
Yeah, okay, I can see
That's it.
you. Hey.
Ah.
Okay, so on this interview, we're gonna focus on your newest musical endeavor, which is Defenders of the Faith. So it is a project in which you play classical heavy metal. So where did the desire to do something like this come from?
Oh, that's my roots, and that was my childhood dream. I mean, when I was 11 years old and had posters that accept an Iron Maiden and Judas Priest on the wall, that's what I wanted to do when I grew up. That was my big dream. And then when I started to play an instrument a few years later, we were kind of playing heavy metal, some thrash heavy metal mixture in the very beginning of the band when we were called Blitzkrieg. Um, and then we would change the name to Therion a year later in 1988, and we would start playing death metal. Um, but already I think as early as in 1993, you can hear that we started to blend in heavy metal, classic heavy metal, into Therion. To a smaller degree in the beginning, but nevertheless, we had it in a few songs. And then, if you compare Therion with other symphonic metal bands, we're based on heavy metal if you analyze the guitars, while Epica and Nightwish, for instance, they're very influenced by the 90s bands. They come from the Metallica Pantera tradition, while with Therion, you hear more Iron Maiden and Judas Priest and Accept in the guitar work. So heavy metal was always a very vital part of what I did. But um, I feel kind of with Therion that I did everything I wanted to do. So when we did the Leviathan series, it was to try to give the fans what they want, because it was something we never did before. And once we were done with that, I was like, okay, now what? And then I realized I really miss having a heavy metal album in my catalog, living the dream, making a record that sounds the way I imagined it when I was 11, exactly how I imagined it back then. So it's like a blend between my favorite bands from them. A lot of Accept, of course, and a lot of Judas Priest and Maiden. Um, and it was kind of a 50-year birthday present to myself, because if you're going to make a self-release side project, you're not looking to earn money, you're looking to lose money. So I said, well, never mind, I'm going to record it professionally, and if I can press like 300 vinyls, so I can have a vinyl to myself and sit and listen to it, and I can think about being 11 years old and tell my 11-year-old self, like, hey kid, you made it, this is a record you were dreaming about. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, I never became so famous that I'm playing arenas, but I know, for instance, Tobias from Ghost. I mean, even though he play arenas, he's a big music fan. He's like a die-hard fan of some band, like for Candlemas, for instance. Last time we met, we were sitting and talking about Candlemas albums, and at the end of the day, you're just a metal fan, even if you make music and even if you become successful with it. So this was really like the childhood dream for me to make this. And in the beginning, I had very modest goals. Like I said, I just wanted to make 300 vinyls and maybe 500 CDs for Therion collectors, whatever. I wrote the record in 2 weeks or less, during a 2-week period. Maybe I spent 3 working days, so I just plugged in the guitar, wrote some songs, and yeah, cool, let's make a heavy metal album. But then I thought, well, maybe we can shape up some stuff. And, me and Thomas are really, really good songwriting team. So I sent most of the songs to him and said, maybe we can like polish them a little bit. And it ended up us working for another 2 weeks. And we didn't just polish the songs, we completely rewrote most of them. And we wrote enough material for a second album. So all of a sudden, after 1 month of work, we had two pretty good records. And I thought this turned out way better than I thought. So it's too good to just fumble away. So I thought maybe we should do this, do it the right way. So I started to look around with record labels, and huge labels said this is really good. We want to sign this. So I made a contract for both of the albums. And yeah, that's how it started. And then I got dropped because of the Saxon T-shirt and because of having a gun. So now I'm back to self-release again. But there's a good thing with that, actually. I was thinking about now, I'm learning about digital promotion and all that. So I've asked myself, when we changed record label from Nuclear Blast to Napalm Records, like, do you really need a record label anymore? For me, it was always a question of how many physical albums do you sell? If you sell a lot of physical albums, then it's better to have a record label, because you need to put a lot of money up front for the production. You need to store it somewhere, send it to distributors. You have a distributor in each country, and then you need to get statements from them, invoice them. It's a lot of work, logistics. It's not so easy. But if you get to a point where you only make a limited digital series, the CD is becoming a little bit how the vinyl was in the beginning of the 90s. You won't remember that, because back then you would be buying cassettes in a kiosk, the pirate cassettes. I remember those. I still have a few. It's pretty cool. But in the West at the time, vinyl was totally on the way out. You could go to stores and buy vinyls, like famous vinyls, for next to nothing. And I was still a vinyl guy, so I would buy vinyls for next to nothing. And it feels a little bit like that. That's how the CD is now. So when you get to a point when you just press a few thousand CDs and you ship them and that's it, and you're not going to repress it, then I don't really think I need a record label anymore. So I still have 2 more records to go with Napalm. But with Defenders now, this is a very good test ground for me to see how much work is it now. And I actually licensed the vinyl to Suburban because it's too much hassle, and because if you don't press a lot, you have insane pressing times. If you have good connection and you press a lot of vinyl, you can get faster delivery. So they were able to press the vinyl so we could have it released at the same time as the CD. So I decided to license it. But I'm doing the work myself with the CD now. And I'm just going to do a limited series, and that's it. But it's a bit different, because with Defenders, it's a new band. So it's harder to sell a new band than if sell a new record to somebody who already have the previous 15 albums, If somebody have all the Therion albums already, of course they want to have the new Therion album as well, physical. But when you don't have such a collection, and also with Defenders, there will be partly a Therion audience, but I would estimate that 90% of the Therion audience, they don't like pure heavy metal. So I don't have that much for free. You get a little bit for free if you're in a famous band. The main thing is that you have the know-how, you have the contacts. You don't need to learn how things work, and you know who to speak to and so on. But you don't get that much for free as you think when it comes to actually selling the music, because people don't give a shit who you are. They give a shit about how it sounds like. And actually, let's be honest, 90% of all the solo albums and side projects are shit. They sell nothing. Nobody wants it. It's like some guy, like the bands that I listen to, my heroes from their generation, it's like, oh, I want to make a blues album, You have like Adrian Smith, Adrian Kotzen project, stuff like that, or British Lion from Steve Harris. This sells nothing, It's the British Lion, they're like a tiny club band, They have a few thousand listeners a month on Spotify. It doesn't matter if you're Steve Harris. It doesn't matter that you wrote Number of the Beast. But what you're selling now is not Number of the Beast, So why would I listen to something I don't like just because it's Steve Harris? And that's how it is. So you get the ear of people for 5 minutes, they will check out the first song. If they think the first song sucks, half of the people won't bother to hear something more. And if maybe the other half would give one more single a chance, but that's it. You heard two shitty songs, you're not going to bother. So you don't get that much for free. You need to work yourself up pretty much from scratch. I mean, you have few head starts, especially with music media. I mean, if I contacted German Metal Hammer, for instance, and they know who I am, and it sounds interesting. They want to hear it, and they decided to do an interview. If it would have been a completely new band, they wouldn't have interviewed them. So of course you have certain advantages in the reaching out thing, but if you don't have the content that people want, they don't give a shit who you are, what you did before. Why would they?
And the history of Defenders of the Faith is closely related to the band KK Priest. So did you have the chance to get a response from Downing regarding the two tracks that you wrote for him?
No, they never replied. But I didn't send it to him. I sent it to the management, and nobody asked me to send the song, so I can't be disappointed. And actually, I didn't count on that they would want the songs, because in KK's autobiography, he writes that he didn't like the idea that Judas Priest used songwriters for some records. So I thought he's probably gonna say no, but I thought, why not? It doesn't cost anything, and just to be prepared in case they would say, okay, let's hear what you've got. I need to write something. So we wrote two songs just in case, they would say, let's hear what you got. The only disappointment is that the management didn't even get back to me, which I think is a bit unprofessional. And my concern there is not for personal reasons. It's because KK apparently have an unprofessional management. It's like if an artist who is bigger than you contact you and offer songwriting thing, at least you give a reply. I mean, if I give a personal reply to all kinds of people who contact me, offering stuff that I don't want, like people are, having ideas that, I wrote this song, maybe Therion can record it. Like, no, we can't record your song, but they will get a polite personal answer at least, and they want to invite me for projects or guest appearance, whatever. And in 99% of the cases, I say no, because I don't have time for my own stuff even. I write more music than I have time to record. So then I'm not going to work with somebody else's stuff, no matter how good it is. But everybody always gets a personal reply, so I thought that was a little bit unprofessional. He could have told his the manager could have told his secretary's assistant or whatever to tell me to fuck off or whatever, then it would have been fine,
So how did it happen that Ripper Owens is singing on Intruder?
Because I contacted him and asked.
It's funny because they didn't answer you when you wrote the management of KK Priest, and you have the KK Priest vocalist on your album in the end.
Yeah, because I wrote straight to the guy. Artists would always do that. That's why I'm saying the management is unprofessional, because if you get a request like that, you're always polite. And I mean, if I was the manager, even if I knew that KK is going to say no, I would say, send it and I'll see what it is. And if I, as a manager, was totally blown away, I would ask KK, like, yeah, take a listen at least, then maybe he would say no anyway. But I think when you make the second album, when you start, it's usually the difficult record. It's not always true, but very often it's the case that you write a lot of songs for a long period and you make the first record, and then you're going to deliver a second album 1 year after, 2 years after, and then you don't have the same amount of time to write songs. Personally, I think Iron Maiden Killer is a very underrated record. I love it. But it does consist of leftovers. There are like 70s Maiden songs, that they had to pick in because they didn't have enough songs. And it wasn't as successful. You have that with a lot of bands, like Wasp. They made, one of the best debut albums ever. And then The Last Command, it had the hit songs, but it had a lot of fillers as well. There are many examples of that, actually. So I thought, maybe, maybe there's a small chance, but they didn't want it. But on the other hand, I mean, if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have got an idea because I think that was about the time when I got this idea. Now I had two heavy metal albums, and I started to think about like, hey, what didn't I do? I didn't do a heavy metal album. Wait, I have two heavy metal songs, and that's when I wrote the rest.
So I won't ask about the name Defenders of the Faith because it's pretty obvious. However,
Yes, of course.
I will ask about another band called Defenders of the Faith from Sweden and playing covers of Judas Priest because they were strongly dissatisfied with the fact that this was the name you choose for the band. So have you heard them before?
Yeah, I got the same question in Sweden Rock Magazine. I don't see why they have to make such a big deal out of that. But first of all, they're not the first band. I mean, there's an American cover band called Defenders of the Faith who had that name before the Swedish band did. So if anybody should complain, it's the American band. And the Swedish band clearly didn't have any problem using the same name as the American cover band. So who the fuck are they to complain, to be brutally honest? But other than that, I don't really see the problem. They play covers, they play live. We don't play live. We will not play live. We make our own music and we sell it. They didn't record anything. They didn't sell anything. So I don't see any flash of interest. I did register the trademark because there are actually, I think, three cover bands called Defenders of the Faith. There's one in America, there's one in Sweden, and one I'm not sure where they are from, but from somewhere else found on YouTube. So of course you start checking around, if there are any bands, but you check Spotify. If nobody released music on Spotify, that means the name is fine, and then you check with um, um, the trademark registration. Did somebody register the trademark? No, nobody registered it. And the Swedish band, they've been around for 10 years. And if they didn't register the trademark, that means that they're not serious. Then you have to live with the fact that somebody else can use it. I mean, now I own the trademark, but that doesn't mean I'm going to fuck with them. And theoretically, I could, have a lawyer tell them you need to change name. But the way I see it, we all play in team metal. I think they're great. I think they should continue. Well, why not? We're both Priest fans. I don't see the problem. But I registered it for the sake of that nobody should be able to fuck with me and say you cannot use a name.
So there were quite a few options to support Defenders of the Faith in the official store, and one of the pre-order options was to become a godmother or godfather. And this package includes, among other things, the possibility of shooting with you with real weapons. So where did the idea for such a promotion come about?
It's because of the picture with the gun, because the record label that dropped us, I mean, the main issue was the t-shirt. I mean, that's so fucking ridiculous, but yeah, it's not much more to say about it. I mean, it's a Saxon t-shirt and they complain. Um, but then also you have a gun and, think about war in Ukraine, war in Gaza, maybe somebody gets sad. And I was like, maybe somebody gets sad. Hold on a second. Since when did metal get a bunch of fucking pussies and sissies? Metal was about provoking. I mean, Wasp were throwing raw meat on the audience back then, which is today you would probably think like raw meat, what's the big deal? But back then it was like scandalous. They wanted to ban them. They wanted to forbid them to perform. You were not allowed to have a Wasp t-shirt in school. You had to go home and change t-shirt and come back or have something to hide it with. Um, so I don't know. I don't want to get political, but this whole woke bullshit and cancel culture thing, it gives me allergic reactions. If somebody want to talk about that, please walk to the other side of the planet and do it so I don't have to hear it. So I'm not gonna have some fucking record label tell me what t-shirt I can have. And then with the gun thing, I thought, well, let's make a thing out of it then. And also I noticed like in social media, you have to post a lot of stupidities if you're going to penetrate the radio noise. Like if I make a news post about us releasing new music, we get, if you say for my artist profile, Christofer Johnsson one, I have 30,000 followers. I get maybe 300 likes if I post new music. New digital single or new video clip out. When I posted a picture of myself and Christian Vidal drinking a beer on the airport, I get 1,000 likes. I posted a picture of myself with a gun and I got 1,300 likes. So you gotta give the audience what the audience wants if you want to sell your music, you know. So I would never compromise with my content. I paint the painting exactly how I want it, and nobody should tell me anything on how I should do my work there. But once I made the painting and I'm gonna try to sell it, well, then you need to use those means possible, you know.
And
And
you mentioned the other side of the world, which is funny because I checked an article from the Rolling Stone Brazil about Defenders of the Faith, and your picture, gun on your picture was blurred, but not the Saxon T-shirt.
yeah, they're not so sensitive about that. But why would they blur the gun? It's like, well, you know more than me. I didn't know about those things. I didn't do much research on it, but I don't know. It's like heavy metal was about provoking. It doesn't mean you have to provoke, but I'm not going to be like walking on my toes, you know, because some stupid cunts get upset about everything. Seriously, I mean that's just ridiculous. You know, this is heavy metal. It's not. If you're such a pussy that you're like, oh, here's a gun. Yeah, maybe there's some other music style for you. Don't listen to Motorhead. Don't listen to Judas Priest. Listen to music for little girls. You know, there's something for everybody, and with no need to argue about it. But don't, you know, try to tell me that heavy metal cannot be the way it was back then. You know, one of my favorite records is from the 80s is Accept Russian Roulette, very underrated record. And, you know, they have a gun on the front, you know. So when I made the thing with a gun, it was like a mixture between different covers that I like that one and the um, Bomber from Motorhead, you know, where Filthy Taylor sits with Machine Gun, you know. It was like one of the coolest record covers I've seen back then. And I don't know, people are just so uptight and take things too serious today. That's another thing. Heavy metal was never that serious. That's also why the lyrics are not necessarily very intellectual. You know, it's just rock and roll with heavy metal, and you don't need to take yourself that seriously. There, things was done with a laugh. I mean, when Wasp made their photo sessions with blood and like you know, they just had a couple of beers, I guess, and then they took these funny pictures and they went to the pub, whatever. It's not so serious. Something happened in the 90s when people started to take things too serious. You know, and at the end of the day, it's just rock and roll.
And one of the singles promoting the album was I'm in Love with My Tongue, and the lyrics, among the other things, was inspired by the comic book called Tongue Girl. Have you watched the film adaptation? Because it's one of these movies I watched as a kid, like probably 20 times.
I saw it once, but I'm relating more to the comics, you know, that I was reading, and yeah, you need to make record song titles that people notice. You know, like there's this one artist that I really like. She's called Rosalie Cunningham. She used to have a band called Person. It's kind of retro rock. And she had a song title called Fuck Love. And when you buy the record and you listen like Fuck Love, that's the name of the song. I need to hear how this sounds like. And there are sometimes that type of song titles like I really need to hear how this song sounds. And I was thinking about Queen, I'm Loving My Car. If you look at the back of the record, like how does a song sound like called I'm in love with my car? It's something you cannot die without knowing that if you've seen the back of the cover with the track list. So yeah, it was a bit inspired by that because it's one of the hit songs, and I thought let's make a song title that draw attention. It's just about marketing.
And
That's
since
how they did things. Yeah.
yeah, and since Odes to the Gods is a tribute to the gods of heavy metal, I have to ask, what are your favorite heavy metal albums?
Um, Restless and Wild and Balls to the Wall would be the first two records I take if my house is on fire and I have to. So I would say those. Also, Wheels of Steel from Saxon, one of my absolute favorites. Maiden, Peace of Mind, one of my absolute favorites. The debut album from Wasp, one of my favorites. Um, yeah, Motorhead Bomber is an amazing album. Um, Judas Priest, I would probably say Defenders of the Faith and Screaming for Vengeance. If you're talking about studio albums from the 80s, I mean, I really, really like Sad Wings of Destiny, but it's like 70s hard rock. And Unleashed in the East completely blew me away. Also, that was one of these records that completely blew me away. Um, yeah, I would say these are my favorites, but there's so many good records in the 80s, you know, there's so many good records. I never really liked modern metal. I mean, there's a few things I like from the 90s, but in general, I don't like modern sound, even in the old heavy metal bands like Judas Priest. And when they make a new record, they still write good songs, some good songs, but I don't like that there's so much distortion and treble in the guitar sound and clicky bass drums and very cold digital sound. I miss the warmth from analog tape, and I want to kind of hear the wood of the guitar in the chords. You know, I want to hear the wood sing. Um, and I think one of the reasons Defenders of the Faith sounds more genuine 80s heavy metal than a lot of other bands that try to do classic heavy metal today is that those other bands seem to listen only to the 80s heavy metal. While I think if you want to make it sound exactly like back then, you need to listen to the bands that those bands listen to. Like, what did Maiden listen to? They listened to Wishbone Ash, Deep Purple, um, um, Jethro Tull, bands like that, you know, and you can hear that in their music. And I listen to those bands too. I'm a 70s guy. Um, and Judas Priest, they were listening to Jimi Hendrix. I'm a diehard fan of Jimi Hendrix. So I think it's easier for me to make something more genuine because I listen to what those bands listen to instead of just trying to copy those bands. And take Accept. That's basically like a mixture between Judas Priest and AC/DC, and I'm a huge AC/DC fan. That would be one of my favorite bands, also AC/DC. So um, that's why it probably sounds a bit more genuine and not copied, even though it's meant to be a tribute.
And what do you think about some maybe younger heavy metal bands? Are there some bands worth paying attention to? Because I saw last year Wolf, the Swedish Wolf with Johan
Mm.
Kolbeck on drums, and they were very, very good.
They're a good band, but they sound a bit too modern for me still. And it's not pure heavy metal. They mix some other stuff. Um, from the pure heavy metal bands, I mean, pure heavy speed metal, but I think Enforcer is a good band. The singer has he's a bit smurfy voice, but it sounds very genuine, the songwriting. It doesn't sound like the big bands, you know, like Maiden and Priest and Accept. They sound more like the bands that didn't really make it that big. Um, but they sound like one of the better bands from that time, you know, from that division, and they sounds really genuine, and I like the sound, you know.
And
If some of their records was released in the 80s, it would have, you know, they sound like they were made in the 80s, kind of.
and how is the situation with Defenders of the Faith concerts? Because you mentioned in the post that you are unlikely to tour under this banner. So has anything changed? Because after all, it's logistically a little bit easy because the crew is smaller than Interion.
That's actually a misunderstanding. It's not easier because there are so many harmonies made in it. So you need to have a band like Queen where everybody in the band can sing. Um, and Queen didn't perform the entire Bohemian Rhapsody live because they couldn't perform it. So they would play the first part of the song and then they would put the Mamma Mia stuff on tape and then they would start playing again at the end. And you take a song like Northern Stones, for instance. We realized when we did the video clip and we were just miming to it, like, you're gonna need, I mean, actually, the music is written for three guitar players. So if it's gonna sound anything near how it should be, you need to have three guitar players like Iron Maiden. And everybody in the band need to be a good singer, otherwise it can't be performed. Or you need to have a choir, like a metal choir on stage, like Therion. So it's actually not that easy. Yeah. And also you have different lead singers so that are important. So if you're gonna bring the lead singers to make it genuine, then you will be actually end up with more people on Therion. So it's not easier. It's
And you mentioned that you have already some material for the second album. So where will you go on this second album? How will it differ from the first?
it will sound less tributive. Like on this debut, you can really hear, okay, this is like Time Machine, that's a Maiden song, and you have Our Savior, that's a Maiden song. And the other songs are kind of, well, actually, what's the name of that song now? Um, Funeral Pyre. That one is an Accept song. But all the other songs are a blend of different, like you can say this is Accept means Judas Priest. You have I no, actually, Intruder is a that's meant to sound like Judas Priest. But they say Dark Side Brigade, for instance, that's a mixture between Shout at the Devil type of Motley Crue with Judas Priest. Northern Stone is a mixture between Saxons and Scorpions. Heavy Metal Shakedown is a mixture between Accept and Judas Priest. I'm in Love with My Tank is a mixture between Scorpions uh, and Judas Priest, I guess. End of the World. Oh, End of the World is an Accept song also. So I think on the next record you won't have a strong reference. You won't be like, oh, that song was inspired by Accept. It's more general heavy metal. That's the biggest difference. But actually, all the songs are ready. I mean, we could start recording tomorrow if you wanted. But I'm gonna make a Luciferian Light Orchestra next. So I will make a Defenders album, then a LLO album, and then the second Defender album, then the second LLO album, and then we get back to Therion in 2028 is the plan.
And how is the
So
situation with the concert from Mexico? Because Therion recorded the show with the orchestra for the DVD Blu-ray release.
we're working on the final edits of the screen. I mean, the audio has been mixed and edited already, so now we're just working on the um, on on the motion pictures. But it was quite hard to edit. It's so difficult to make a show with orchestra like that because you get so much bleed into the microphones. Um, Live, you get some natural sound from the stage. You hear some of the orchestra from there, but when you make a recording, you only have what you get in the microphones, and you get all kinds of shit into the microphones. So you have strings are very weak in the sound. So you will get a lot of brass in there, you will get a lot of percussion in there, you get noise from the PA with the band, you get the drums. That means if you want to have more strings, you get more of all the other stuff at the same time when you pull it up from the mixing desk. And it's EQ different, so it's not like okay, now the drums get high. Now you EQ it for strings, but then you get drums with string EQ louder all of a sudden. So it's really, really, really difficult to balance this out. It's a balance between sounding weird and strange and not hearing the instruments. So you need to find somewhere in between where you don't ruin the sound, but you can still somehow hear what's being played. And that's why I didn't want to do a show with orchestra again because it's so difficult. And I said no for 15 years. But then they offered so much money in the end that everybody's anus has a price tag, you know. As you say, like, nobody's gonna put a finger up my ass. Never. And then it's like, you get this money. You've never seen that much money in your life. Like, okay, you can put your finger in my ass and you count the money meanwhile, you know. Anybody who say they wouldn't do that, they haven't seen enough money. That's how humanity works. Okay, maybe Bill Gates wouldn't do it because he doesn't know how to spend the money. But for regular mortals, you know, I earned more money from that one evening than I did the 10 years of touring with Therion. So I just had to do it. But I knew all these problems going to come. I knew people's going to complain. And if you, because it became such a big thing, like we sold 11,000 tickets, there were still people in the street outside. It was sold out. It's our first and only arena show ever with Therion as a headliner. So then, of course, everybody's like, "Oh, you must record this. You must record this." And yeah, okay, we record it, but I knew all these problems going to come. It's going to be so difficult to mix it and do everything. And in the end, everybody's going to be, I don't think anybody's going to be super happy with it because the people who were there, they will not think it's as good as it was there because then you had the natural sound from the stage as well. And of course, the feeling of being there. Um, and the people who were not there, they would be like, oh, I don't hear that so clear. So I'm actually going to reveal a secret to you. Most orchestral live recordings by bands, I'm not going to say any name, but I just say most, they are fake. They re-record the stuff later because of these problems. Some of them even have backing tracks when they play live because they know how difficult it is. So then people see the violin players and they hear violins. You can just pre-record it at one of the rehearsals and you put it on backing tracks. Who's going to know the difference? I can mention Manowar because they get caught with it. They did it and they were criticized for it because Joe DeMaio, he's not stupid. He know how difficult this is. So he's like, you want to do a show that sounds like crap, one that sounds like good. Let's put it on tape. Well, unfortunately for him, somebody found out. He fucked it up. So they got a lot of criticism, and especially for Manowar fans, I think that wasn't fun because Manowar also a band that I really love. Into Glory Ride, one of the best heavy metal albums ever. The first four albums by Manowar were insanely good and was a big inspiration for me over the years. But Manowar fans that are supposed to be really true, if you fake it there, it's not the best band to fake such a thing. But anyway, they did it and they burnt their fingers and people moved on. But there's a reason why people do that. But I don't do these things by principle. There's so much money being shredded into it. So I think if I ever do an orchestral show ever again in my life, it will be the way that Deep Purple did it in 1970. That you have all the sounds coming natural from stage in a smaller venue, an acoustic venue, like a classical music hall, small one, and then you have to put guitar amplifiers to a certain level, and it has to stay that way. That means it won't be perfect, but everything will come natural from stage. Then it works.
Okay, so this is everything that I have prepared. So thank you very much for your time, and well, have a good evening.
Same to you. Bye.
Bye.